Hey Dave, how you doing today?
Good, Cal. What's going on?
Just doing a podcast, just
Oh, excellent.
trying to market our little services and our business.
Sounds like fun.
How about you?
About the same. Just
Yeah,
wrapping up a couple of clients' things here and getting ready for our podcast for August on excuses within insurance agencies.
I love it. Well, let's figure where are you going to be in August? What's going on?
I'm very local. I've got one vacation planned down the Cape. I've got a couple of agents up here in Massachusetts, and then we had the big I convocation event up in Springfield, Mass. Well.
That'll be fun. We're going to see all the education directors for the Big I, let them know a little bit about our speaking services and all that fun stuff. I am as well looking forward to that because there is nothing like Springfield, Massachusetts in August.
It'll be nice and cool.
That's right. That's right.
Where are you going to be?
I am actually heading to Michigan. I'm going to do some work with Hastings Mutual, a great carrier. We've got a good partnership out there with them. So I get to train some of their team for 3 consecutive days. So I think my husband will be psyched when I come back because if I still have a voice, it'll be a miracle. So maybe a little quieter.
Yeah.
So we got some training days, things like that. Also going to be at convocation. But, August is such a cool month because I feel like everybody slows down a little bit. It's like the final golf outings, the final back to school, the final vacation days. So it should be some fun out there. And then early in August, though, we were at ARS's big event, which is fun.
Yeah. Yeah, again, another local event up here in Massachusetts at Gillette, local restoration vendor, huge symposium they call theirs, which was great to, see some clients and learn some new things there too.
And, it's also great too, Dave, is that we've got some new states that we found the state training grant money on, right?
Yeah.
So what are we up to now as far as the states that we know have some approved funds for clients?
Let's see, Massachusetts, Connecticut, New Hampshire, Vermont, Wisconsin, Ohio.
Rhode Island.
Biggest little state in the country.
Very important state, though. Headquarters.
Very important.
Very important.
Great businesses run out of there.
Phenomenal.
Did I miss any?
I think you got all of them. So it's exciting. You guys can hop onto our website, check it out. Also, if you guys haven't taken a look, we have a new website up. So definitely take a look at that. Got some new features on there. We're going to keep building on it. But really excited to kind of show off our products a little bit more, our resources for agents. So there's one thing I can say. There's a ton of free resources on our website that I hope you guys all take advantage of.
Yeah, I wanted to add on the grants as well. We're constantly looking in other states, so we're probably juggling maybe 10 or so new states where we're actively pursuing approval and trying to understand the process because each state is different.
Yeah.
But if you're in a state we haven't mentioned and you're aware of a program or you'd like us to research it, certainly reach out to us and we'll tell you, either if it's in our pipeline and where we could use your help or where we're at, or if it's not, we'll add it into the mix.
Awesome. So now we're talking about one of my favorite topics, excuses.
Was that sarcasm in there, Kelly?
I don't know. I just think that there's so many excuses that float around every day, whether it's like one of my personal just little excuse favorites is, I was late to work because I got stuck behind a bus. And I'm always like, the same bus hits every single day. You just have to leave earlier. Like you can't use an excuse more than once, maybe twice a year. It can't be a weekly thing. And you can't say you're late to work and then come in with the Dunkin' Donuts cup. Like that to me is like, hey, the excuse was the line at Dunkin' Donuts was too long and you just didn't get up early enough to deal with it.
My favorite was when I had an interview show up 15 minutes late with the Starbucks. That was
right?
and only one Starbucks. It would have been one thing if there was 2.
Yeah.
That was a very short interview.
I can only imagine. Those are some good examples of like small little things that can kind of eat us up. But I think our podcast today is really kind of focused on what we're talking about this August, which is just excuses in general. So one of the privileges Dave and I have by going into so many agencies is we really can see these excuses in, kind of mass scale. So we thought it'd be fun to maybe talk about 2 or 3 of our favorite excuses that we've run into on a routine basis and kind of our responses to them. And then you should also check out our latest ebook because we go into depth even more on some different excuses. So if you're reading this or hearing it and you're sort of thinking to yourself, this resonates with me, make sure you check out that ebook that we have, because it's a huge, huge, awesome resource. So Dave, why don't you start? What's been your favorite excuse?
Well, I'm going to jump right into the sales side of the house, because that's kind of my favorite kind of topic to talk about.
Yeah.
And to me, the most obvious one when it comes to sales is not hitting your goals or not achieving a bonus threshold that you believe that you can hit. And I think especially when it comes to the goals, not achieving goals, there's all kinds of excuses. And I think the problem, and you'll probably hear this theme as we talk about most excuses, is there's no accountability on our own part. So it's always something else. So it's always people just care about money. I'm having a hard time getting people back on the phone. Nobody wants to pick up my call. So it's always about saying, these people aren't doing what I want them to do, instead of saying, what should I be doing different? So one excuse I consistently hear is, nobody's returning my phone call. Okay, well, what are the couple of things that you can do to improve that rate of people returning your phone call? So to me, there's two obvious ones. One is, what is the voicemail that you're leaving? Are you just kind of like, hey, yeah, I'm calling about your insurance, give me a ring? Or are you explaining who you are, talking about why you're calling, and talk about the value calling you back? And are you doing so with a good, strong voice tone, some excitement? Like, give me a reason to call you back.
Right.
And then I think the other one that I always think of when it comes to getting the return phone call is relying on the voicemail solely as a way to encourage the phone call back. Now, I, for one, very rarely listen to my voicemails.
Me too.
Yeah, I know, Cal. I will listen to the voicemails from people who I know who they were on my phone. So if I get a call and it says Kelly Donahue Pirro, and I get a voicemail, I will listen to that voicemail.
That's really smart.
Yes. I know some things.
Smart.
But if we just rely on the fact that, they might have a missed call from a number that's not programmed into their phone, we might leave a voicemail from a number that's not programmed into their phone, what are the odds that they're going to return that call? Or even listen to that voicemail, the opportunity to return the call? So adding things in like a good, strong email, a text message, if you have that capability, will certainly encourage people to call back and give them the reason for your call and the value in returning the call. But we have to eliminate just the idea that they're not doing what I want to do and there's nothing I can do.
Well, you're leaning in one of my favorite passionate things, right? Which is, we can describe the problem or we can talk about the solutions forever, right? Like there's a famous quote from a movie. It's like, I'm drowning and you're describing the water. Like, what about talking about, that's great, no one returns your phone call. So if I hear you correctly, what you're saying is when somebody says that, they're just using that as an excuse versus saying, hey, I'm struggling here. How can we do this better? Like, what's the real cause of it, right?
Yeah, there's a difference between somebody coming to me and saying, how can I get more people to return my phone calls? And I'm not hitting my sales goal because people aren't returning my phone calls. It's two different approaches. And more than willing to have any conversation with anyone on solving a problem. It's when you're just throwing it out there as an excuse and a reason why. And again, it comes back to the accountability. When I hear that, I feel like the person's like, not my fault, nothing I can do about it. Never mind, everyone else in my department's hitting their sales goals. They're getting better leads, or always coming up with some other reason for it.
Totally. That makes a ton of sense. So what we're really saying is that, excuses tend to resonate as statements, not questions.
Right. Right. As whining, not asking for help.
Right. Just not gonna happen.
Yeah.
I got you.
Yeah. What about you? What do you think? What's your favorite excuse to conquer?
I feel like I've built an entire career off of this one statement, and it's almost to the point where it's like that. If I had a nickel every time I heard it, I'd be the richest person on the face of the planet. And it almost makes my skin crawl that I'm still talking about this a decade later, but it's still.
Are you actually going to say the words?
I am. I'm too busy. And you hear everything from the agency owner, you hear it to the staff, you hear it to, even in your personal life, the I'm too busy thing to me just makes my skin crawl. And the number one reason is like, and I use this example at my trainings, like if you call my retired mother right now and you talk to her, she's going to tell you how busy she is.
Right.
And my mom takes the clothes out of the dryer and irons them on the spot. That's how busy she is. So it's like, it's such a relative term, number one. Number two, it's just such a deflection of an excuse. Like one of our mutual friends, Mike Demko, said to us recently, like, so you're too busy to be better?
Right.
And like, that's just something I just can't get over. I never use the word busy. I hate that word because I want to be productive, number one. Number two, like what you're basically saying is I'm too busy is like you're choosing this lifestyle to lead. And I was at an agency recently where, they're too busy to make all their renewal calls. And what happens when you're talking to staff members about being too busy, this is how the conversation goes. I'm too busy. And then it leans right into this next conversation. What you don't understand is at this office, the phone rings off the hook. What you don't understand is that our customers are needy. What you don't understand is all these reasons defending busy, right? So to your point that you just said, like not saying, how can I be more efficient?
Right.
How can I service my customers better? And then you find out that on like a $500 BOP, they're remarketing it every single year. And you're like, yes, you're so busy doing things that don't generate a positive result.
Right. And I think, and you just said this too, as the busy versus productive, right? It's basically task-oriented versus results-oriented. So that's great. You did 1,000 things today. Congratulations. None of those things had any effect on putting yourself in a better position or in growing the agency. You're better off doing 5 things that were helpful and got the results you were looking for. So it's shifting not just the idea of how busy we are, but which tasks are we focused on.
Yeah, absolutely. And then what we see the account managers do is they do this thing I call it peacocking. Like, so we're going through all the things that are too busy. We're trying to get to solutions. And then they go through these peacock of like 10 different strange weirdo situations over the past year that they've had to deal with. Like the pit bull with the trampoline and the pit bull got hurt on the trampoline. And now, I'm
in the pool.
10 hours of my life on it. It's like these are the things you have to give people. And this is the thing. Don't get emotionally involved. Give people their options. Let them make an adult decision. That's all you got to do. But people get so wrapped up into it. And then I think if you parlay that into owners being too busy, you and I've talked about this a lot. The owner of an agency over time should graduate out of being the top producer for the business. They should be the rainmaker and then send the opportunities to people. But if you're the number one producer and you're feeling all that weight and that pressure of production to keep the agency afloat, that's great when you're a scratch agency because you have to do that. But your number one goal has got to be a sprint to firing yourself out of production. Now, that doesn't mean that you don't bump into things, but you need to have teams of people to help you with that because it does not equate to agency growth at the end of the day. Makes you feel good that you're great at producing, but it doesn't pay you back from the stress level, number one, and also the revenue.
Yeah, I completely agree. What do you think about in terms of like efficiency? Do you feel like we bring a lot of busyness onto ourselves because whether we're not efficient in a procedure or we're just not efficient in our work routine, meaning, we come in 5 minutes late because I stopped to get a cup of coffee or I fell behind that bus. Now I'm chit-chatting. Now I'm doing this. Now I'm doing that. How much of my time am I actually spending focused and being focused on the task?
Well, it's 100%. It's like when you walk into agencies and you look in their management system and everyone's got 100 overdue suspenses, like you're living in this. It's acceptable to be behind, right? There's 50 unread emails and inboxes, all these overdue suspenses, paper everywhere. I'm like, you have created an environment where that's okay, as opposed to saying, we're cleaning it out. By Friday, all the suspenses are caught up or bumped out. Your email's down, and then we're keeping it clean every week because you can't live like that. You're in I once heard a quote that said garbage in, garbage spreads. Like to me, like when second inefficiency comes in, it just spreads everywhere and everyone's working 10 times harder. And yeah, it's tough, right? We still have a lot of people that are kind of like set in their ways in agencies. but we have to press people out of that box, because otherwise the amount of undocumented stuff, disorganization, just, it doesn't work. Like, one thing is, if your team is really pushing you and busy, take your seat, sit them right next to their chair and watch them work for 4 hours.
Right.
And then they'll be like, oh, the phone's not ringing that much today.
Yeah.
I don't know.
That always happens, right? Oh, today isn't the day that we're busy.
Yeah, well, I mean, I don't know if you get this, but a lot of times it's funny when I go into agencies, they're like, oh, you came on such a late day. I'm like, must be a miracle.
Well, you said one thing too there about, like, whenever you set a deadline, so if we're going to get this cleaned up by Friday, it almost seems like we're always able to do that, like when there's a deadline. And you've heard me say this a million times, but the first blog I wrote this month on excuses, always the time where I feel, and I think this is true of most people I talk to, the most caught up is when I'm about to go on vacation. Because I know 2 weeks before, next Friday, I'm going on vacation. So now I'm coming in a little earlier. I might be staying a little later. But even taking those two things out, I am really focused on getting to that point where I feel like I can leave, where I'm not laying a bunch of stuff onto other people, or I'm not going to come back from vacation in a huge mess.
Totally. No, I get it. I mean, you could watch our 3-minute video on Too Busy. Everything is about busy, like a little bee. But it's a powerful thing if you just take the word busy out of your statement and come up with something else to say. You'll realize how much you lean on it as a crutch. And like, I'm a believer, the more you say it, the more you are. So, you got to use the right words. But Dave, what's your next biggest excuse that you hear?
So one of the things that I always find interesting when I talk to agents is when we first talk to them, especially when we're going through an assessment and we're talking to them about procedures and data and systems, it comes down to staffing. And we start talking about staffing in before they might have some amazing people, but before we talk about the amazing people, we have to have that conversation about that one employee that really still shouldn't be there anymore. Yet for some reason, whether it's they've been there 30 years or they have a personality, or maybe it's more internally from the principal or the management staff, they just feel bad, they're not able to get over it. But there's constantly this excuse about why we're not able to move on from a poorly performing staff.
Yeah, so what do you say to people like that?
I think it's, number one, you have to recognize, I had a boss years ago tell me that when you protect a poorly performing employee, that is affecting you and your family more than you're helping them and their family. So I think we have this tendency to say, oh, well, I feel bad for them. They have a kid at home, or kids, or a family, or a mortgage, whatever the case may be, and not realizing that they're having a negative effect on us and the other employees in the office. Right. I think that most people know this. When you do finally move on from that troubled employee, all of the other employees, I put them into two buckets. You have the sigh of relief, right? Oh, thank God. This is great. We get to move on. I can't wait to go to work now without that person here. The other bucket is the, I have to step up now bucket, right? Because they look at that person and they're like, yeah, I might have been better than them. We always talked about the rungs on the ladder. So I know where I am, 10-step ladder. I know where I am. And if I'm 2 or 3 from the bottom, I know I'm not great, but I can always look down here and say, oh, there's always that one under me. If they go away, now I'm all of a sudden the bottom rung, or the second to the bottom rung. Now I need to step up a little bit. Before I opened this company and I was managing a team, one of my employees came in. I had a lot of bad leadership qualities in my 20s and early 30s, just because, you're taught all of these things about being like servant leadership and serve your team and be the first one in and the last one out. And if you're following all of that stuff, you're going to kill yourself. It's just like, there are really good principles to it, but I think sometimes it's overdone. Like, you don't need to exhaust yourself and be human duct tape. And we do see a lot of people kind of dive in and you don't empower your team. So one of the team members came to me and said, Kelly, my job here is to make your life easier.
That's why you're here and we're here. And everybody on this team has to make your life easier. And if there's people not making your life easier, you have to make some decisions. And it just kind of clarified everything for me. And I think now being an employer myself, it's like, hey, do I want to pay someone out of the, my own profits or my own pocket at this point, like, to make my life harder? And so when you keep running into the same things, and we used to have this saying, like, you walk into your office and you hope to not talk to somebody today, like, I'm just going to look down and maybe they won't come find me, then you have a problem on your hands. And it's okay to let people go. I've had to make some difficult decisions, in my tenure, but you sometimes bump into those people later on and they thank you because it gave them the opportunity to get out of a position they weren't happy in either. So it's a temporary 2-week, to get to a little bit of a better place sometimes.
Yeah, and I think two of the other things I think that people worry about is, number one, the legal ramifications, because we're not all HR experts. So we sometimes worry, have I done enough documentation? Am I letting them go for the right reason? And then the other one that I always hear too is, at least they're a body. And at least there's someone answering the phone. But like most things, if something's being done bad, you're probably almost better off not having it done at all.
Well, that's like in marriage, like we're staying together for the kids. It's like,
right.
Okay.
And you're better off, like you said, like, go through that headache. So now you're short staffed for a couple of weeks. You have to go hire somebody. You have to train them. You have to kind of get better that way. But otherwise, 5 years passes and nothing's changed, instead of going through that 6-month turmoil to get to a better position.
Yeah, and I mean, don't get me wrong. I think I really think it boils down to the owner has to have the guts to fire someone, right? And it's I've never once looked forward to it, but I've also done it enough to know that it's literally a 60-second conversation.
Right. And I think you have to ask yourself, if you're worried about firing somebody, then it's like, okay, well, what is the reason behind that? Is it just a comfort zone thing? Like, I just don't want to have the conversation? Or is it this HR thing, this hiring thing? What is the thing holding you back? And then you can address it. So if you're afraid that you haven't legally protected yourself, call an HR expert and have them advise you. If you're afraid about hiring and training, go put an ad out there right now. Yeah. Go make the hire now. Bring somebody in extra so you're overstaffed for a couple of months. It's not going to kill you. Right. Put yourself in whatever position you need to put yourself in to make that call.
No, all good points. I think the staffing thing is one of those things that holds a lot of agencies back. It's like, I can't progress until I get these rock stars on the team. But the reality is that you have to be relentlessly looking all the time too.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah.
Good one.
You're up. Last excuse that you hear. Let's wrap it up with one more.
One more excuse that we hear. I think my other favorite excuse, and I'm going to kind of hit the owner level here, is, oh, well, we don't have the funds to invest in X. And I always say this, like, I mean, I laugh. I'm like, if people saw our marketing budget, I think that they would throw up in their own mouths, right? Like, we're in high growth mode. I'm passionate about that. But when I look sometimes, like, what agencies spend on staffing, like you said, so go up a staff member. If you're struggling and you've been understaffed for so long and you find a rock star, put them on the roster. What's the cost of it being stressed out, you losing more team members? Marketing. They say that growing businesses in America take 10% of their revenue. Okay. So not profits, revenue, and put it back into marketing and sales. Are most agencies taking 10% of what's coming into the agency before all the expenses and everything else and putting it back into marketing? We don't have the funds for that. It's like, these are things, I heard a statistic that there's only like 3.5% of agencies in America that invest in training their staff. They take a webinar, they go to CD classes. That's not really training your staff on how to handle the stuff going on their desk. So to me, like, the investment thing that we have to get to, it's like, is it much more fun to buy a new boat? 100%. But if I spend that same money on something like training my team or a great marketing strategy, like, that's going to keep paying you back. And the thing I understand in insurance, like, there's the renewable income concept. So But that to me is the bigger reason to invest, because every dollar I invest in will renew out for a decade potentially. Where in most businesses in America, you invest today and there's not a renewable strategy unless you get somebody to buy something again. And so I'm always concerned about like this investment side of things. And that's why I want to dive in with agencies. Like, are you running financially smoothly? Are you putting money into the right thing? What are you paying yourself? What are you paying people? Like, how are you going to grow this business? Now, you're at the tail end of your career, do what you want. But if you want to grow, don't say that you're not growing because you don't have the funds to invest. You have to find the funds, you have to put them aside, you have to take the carrier bonus money every year if you're lucky enough to get it, and earmark a good chunk of that towards reinvestment into the agency. And that's just what we see. So when you look on all the IAOA, et cetera, you see fun welcome kit boxes, you see marketing strategies, you see video. Those people are reinvesting back into their business.
Yeah, I think what a kind of a sister excuse to that, or maybe a child excuse from that, is that there's an investment in training, but they're investing in CEU classes, or CIC, or things of this nature, where it's like, that's great. The designations are great. They're learning the insurance side of the house. But what about customer service? What about sales training and things of that nature? And then the other one that kind of goes hand in hand with that is there's a lot of free training out there. As carriers will provide training. There's like stuff you can find, numerous videos. There's a lot of free stuff out there that is all good. But what I don't want people to do is fall into this excuse of, well, we found all this free stuff, and we're investing money on the CEU side, therefore we don't have to invest money in that other skill training.
Well, and I think there's another deep, dark secret to this excuse. That's why it's got a lot of different things. It's one, if I invest in training, will my team buy in? I don't want to waste my money. So there's a fear that there's no buy-in and that it's a flop. There's a fear that the owner doesn't make the commitment to see these programs through and out and finalize. So going back to the time, and that's why I kind of want to wrap up with this investment one, is like, looking in the bank account, if the money is there, and I'm not saying that that's for everybody, but, the second half of it is, okay, well, do I feel like I'm going to get a return on it? And when you really have to think about that, you have to look yourself in the mirror and say, is it because I don't think my team will buy in? Is it I don't think I'm going to commit to the program? Or is it I just don't see this program ever working? And if you look at yourself and you say you don't have the time to buy in, then you really have to look at how you're running your business, because if you don't have time to work on the business and train your team, there's a critical component missing. If you look at your staff won't buy in, you have to have a significant conversation with the vendors you're doing saying, I'm concerned about this. How can we make that happen? And hopefully they have a great polished, plan and a whole strategy on how to make that work. But you also have to look and say, well, if my team won't buy in, what is the problem? We've had a lot of pushback come through our programs as far as like, true kind of like old school account manager CSRs, account rounding. I've got a couple on my desk we're working on, and like I have an extraordinarily detailed action plan with each agency, like baby steps. Am I going to take somebody who doesn't want to even get the words out of their mouth to say, where is your auto policy, and turn them into somebody who's selling 15 account rounds a month? No. But if I chunk it out and get them a little step further, it takes some time, but I get their buy-in and we make it comfortable for them, then we have a winning ticket. But you have to work with people that are going to get you through those humps, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I would add to that too. Remember that not all account managers are the same, right? So we all have that account manager who doesn't want to sell. There's other account managers and salespeople out there that are looking for the training. That this is actually as much in their best interest for their career development as it is for the agency. So even though almost every person that we talk to, every principal we talk to kind of starts with this, I'm not sure I'm going to get buy-in, there is typically some truth to that, to some faction of the agency. But then there's this other group who's really excited. I got an email today responding from, she's been in our email database system forever. She signed up on her own for our emails years ago. For the first time, we're going to be working with them. She sent me an email today when our marketing email went out. I've never met her before, and she said, I'm so excited. I was so excited when I heard we're going to be working with you guys.
Oh, that's
so there is
awesome.
a group of employees out there that actually want career development and training. So don't hold yourself back because that vocal minority is always saying, I don't want to do that.
No, I think that that's such a fabulous point because it is. It's always like one or two people and the rest are like moldable clay, but you're in your head, you're thinking they're going to sit there the whole time like,
right.
And you're going to be embarrassed. And but it's a good enough reason to overcome it. So that to me is like my final one is just the investment side of things because, you know, I think that like, you know, we always have this thing for us anyway, Dave, like around, you know, contingency check time, agencies are like, oh, we killed it. We got these great bonus checks. We want to talk to you. And then when you kind of unpeel the onion, there's like this, there's just other reasons, right? That they kind of come up with of fear, uncertainty, doubt, and the vulnerability of, I don't want to go through all this work and effort if it fails. And that to me is really like the core, the heart of the matter is that I'm not, and I say this, I'm not going to let our clients fail.
Right.
We will not let you fail. And we will go through extraordinary things to make sure that that happens. But, you know, at least when you work with us, you know that you're going to have that partner that's going to be there with you hand in hand 100% of the time. So it's not just like, here's a workbook and have a nice day. There's not that fly in, fly out syndrome.
Right. Absolutely.
So if anybody wants to learn more about some of these excuses that we talked about, we do have more in our ebook. So you're going to have to check that out. Make sure you download that. And let's see, where do we have next, Dave? I know we're coming into September, so the kids are going back to school, right?
Kids are going to school, got a lot more travel come up. I'm actually leaving the country to do travel for the first time, headed up to Excalibur up in Ontario. So I'm excited about that. A couple other trips going on. I think I'm going to Pennsylvania and back down to Texas. And I think to Florida too. So I've got a lot going on. Gets a little easier when the kids are back in school.
More of a routine.
Yeah, exactly. Where are you headed next month?
That's a really great question. I don't think I've gotten to September yet. No. I know we have some speaking engagements that I've been so blessed to be booked on. So, you know, you'll start to see some of those things come out. But, you know, we've got quite a few things going on in the month of September. I don't have kids, so the back to school thing is not as much of a relief for me, except I know all the people come back to work.
Yes. Yeah. Well, that's what I really like about August too, is that August is kind of that, okay, September's coming, it's time to plan. Like, what are we going to do? I know it's not really the second half of the year, it's really the second third of the year, but it's kind of like, okay, how are we going to push to end the year strong? And the planning that you do in August can be executed in September and October to really end the year strong.
Yeah, there's something like when the weather breaks, and here it's still really warm in September, but like October, November, like I kind of go into planning mode and all other great things. So, you know, I think it's going to be a great end of the year. And the reality is we don't have that many more months left to this year.
It's true.
So if any of you guys are out there thinking about things that you wanted to get to, you didn't get to, you know, let everybody know we are an option. You can give us a call, visit our website. Happy to have a 15-minute conversation with anybody. Both Dave and I have always welcomed that opportunity. So check out the new website. Let us know what you think. But we'll be happy to get on the next podcast. Check out our blogs, emails, all that fun stuff. We'd love to engage with you guys. So thanks so much for listening, and we'll catch you on our next podcast.
All right. Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone.